It was getting to that festive time of year, and so all of the villagers were preparing. They were hanging up decorations, picking out their Christmas trees, and... oh, how could I forget? They were also preparing for the deadly attacks from the mutant gingerbread man. So, how did this all happen? Well, it all began in a snowy tundra village thousands of years ago, when the village baker was creating some gingerbread cookies. And well, when the time came to sell his cookies, he found that he was selling out very quickly. And so he began making more and more gingerbread cookies. And again, every time, he would sell out extremely quickly. And so seeing this opportunity to make more emeralds than he had ever before, he began to ramp up his cookie production rapidly. And so soon he had built a massive mixing bowl just on the outskirts of his village, which he would use to create thousands of cookies every day. And with that, over the next few weeks, he became increasingly wealthy as his cookie empire continued to grow and grow and grow, especially during these festive celebrations. Well, that was until one night when everything changed. As whilst preparing another large batter of gingerbread, he hears an explosion. Maybe it was just a creeper, and so he decided to ignore it and just continue adding to his batter. But then he sees something, as houses were starting to light on fire, and then he saw hundreds of villagers all running away from these fires, screaming. The baker jumped down from his bowl to see what the source of all this commotion was and how these fires had started. And well, as he came down, he saw what was causing it, as all of these strange events were coming from this creature that he had never seen before. It was like a skeleton, except it had a glowing pendant across his neck, and he was wearing some of the villagers' ice suits. Wait, was that the legendary Stray? He was shocked, as it was only a few days ago that there began being reports on that creature, and he never really thought that he would get to see him. And so the baker backed up to his bowl, trying to hide, as he didn't want to run away, as that would just leave his source of wealth unattended, and that could lead to someone stealing from him. However, doing that was a very bad idea, as that Stray sees him and shoots him with one of his special arrows. And so the baker was sent flying backwards and knocked violently into his bowl. And that hit was so strong that a hole emerged in the bowl. That can't be good, as quickly boiling hot batter began spewing out of the bowl and covering the terrain. Now, thankfully, no other villagers were caught by this. But the baker and Stray? Well, they weren't so lucky, as they were washed away by the boiling batter as it dragged them across the tundra. The baker was burning alive from the batter, and he was very soon going to die. But that Stray, he wasn't being injured, he was just floating in the air, as his pendant was now glowing and was giving him a force field. The baker saw this, and in his final moments before being burned to death, grabbed onto the pendant and stole it, just thinking that maybe this pendant was the source of his safety, and thus he could be saved. And well, he may have been correct, as the Stray began to burn and he sank into the batter. Meanwhile, the baker began to glow and stopped burning, but he was too weak from all the other burns he had suffered from the batter that he began to lose consciousness, and so he began to sink into the batter and he blacked out. Early the next morning, the baker awoke in a pile of dried up batter, and so as he began to open his eyes, ready for a new day of healing and rest after almost drowning in his own cookie batter, he sees a group of young villager children surrounding him. He was confused on why they were all surrounding him, but as he tried to get up to try and ask them what they were doing, they all began to run away, screaming. He was now even more confused, but then he saw the pile of dyes around him and concluded that these younger villagers must have just been playing some sort of prank on him. And so he walks over to a nearby iceberg to look at the damage done. And well, he was horrified at what he saw, as this was far worse than just some drawings. The gingerbread batter had solidified on him, and he was now some sort of gingerbread man, Also, all those dyes that the villager children were decorating with him had turned him into some sort of decorated gingerbread man. He was horrified. But maybe this will all just wash off, he thought. And so he went to pick off the gingerbread from himself. But he couldn't. It felt as if this gingerbread was a part of him. And so he took a step back to try and think what he had to do next. And well, he had no idea what to do, as this was not something that had ever happened to him, or had happened to anyone that he had ever known. And so after a few minutes of just standing there, the gingerbread villager turns around and heads back to his village to hopefully find someone that could help him. And well, again, he was horrified at what he saw, as his baking bowl was completely destroyed. And more than that, the entire village was completely destroyed, as the houses were burnt, the paths were dug up, and the farms were leaking. And worse than that, there were no villagers in sight, and it looked like that his village had been abandoned. And so the gingerbread man started to look around just to see if he could find anyone left, as those villager children must have come from somewhere. But he spent the entire day looking all throughout the village, and he had no luck. And so soon it was starting to become night, and he was beginning to lose hope. Will he ever find someone to help him? He didn't know. But as the night began to consume the sky, he was preparing to sleep under the charred remains of his bakery, when he sees something in the distance. It was a campfire. That must be where the villagers are. And so the gingerbread man starts running towards the light, hoping to see the villagers. And well, he did, as they'd all set up a campsite after the devastating attack of the stray. And so he runs into the campsite, excited to see all the other villagers.
Hello, it's me, the baker, the one who sold you all those amazing gingerbread cookies. Remember me? Well, I need your help.
The camp went silent, deadly silent. But that silence was quickly broken by a young villager.
Lies. He boiled to death in his own cookie batter. I saw it. You are the evil gingerbread man. We've all heard of you in legends before, but we never knew that you were real.
And before the gingerbread man could properly explain that he wasn't the mutant creature from the age-old tales that the villager children were told, that he was just the baker, the one that had sold them all those cookies. But the young villager just charged at him with a sword drawn. The gingerbread man backed up, not wanting to hurt the child, when all of a sudden, the pendant they had stole from that stray began to glow, as it was still inside him, somehow. And so it was then that he began to close his eyes, bracing for the young villager's attack, when he opened his eyes and was stunned at what he saw, as all of the villagers had just turned into cookies? Had he just killed them by accident? He was horrified, and so he ran to pick up all the cookies. They all looked normal, not like they were villagers or anything. Maybe all the villagers were just teleported away and were replaced by cookies somehow. And so he decided to eat one, to just test if it was a normal cookie. However, as he bit into that cookie, he hears it, the cries of a villager, and worst of all, the cries were coming from within the cookie. And so he runs away from the campsite, devastated at what he'd just done to all of the villagers that were really his friends. And so for the next few hours, he just tries to calm down. This was all an accident. He didn't mean to do this. He can probably fix it, hopefully. But as he calms down, he sees another campfire. Except this one was brighter and larger. Maybe this was another campsite with more villagers. And so he ran towards the light. And well, it was actually a village. But regardless of that, he ran into the city centre, ready to speak, when a villager from that campsite that he just turned everyone to cookies with emerged and shouted, "Run away! That mutant gingerbread man will turn you into a cookie." That confused the gingerbread man, as he thought that everyone was killed. But no. But regardless of his opinion, chaos was set all throughout the village, as all the villagers recognized the childhood legend of the mutant gingerbread man. And so they all began running away. But there was one villager who didn't want to run. he wanted to stay and fight so that he could kill the gingerbread man.
We all know that you are the gingerbread man, and we will not let you cookieify our people.
And once again, before the gingerbread man could warn him that he was just a villager baker, not a mutant monster, his pendant lit up, and all the villagers around him were once again turned into cookies. Everyone stopped running for a second as they all just stared at the flashing lights and the cookies. But then, after a few seconds, they all began to run again, realizing that they too would become cookies if they stayed anywhere near him. The gingerbread man didn't know what to do, as he never wanted to turn anyone to cookies, and he wanted to find a way to turn them back, but he had no one to talk to, and so he had no one to help him. And so eventually he just decided to stand there and let everyone run away, as him chasing them would just increase their fear and would make them even less likely to help him. Also, he knew from that point onwards he couldn't go to any other villages either, as those that escaped this village would have probably warned those other villagers about him. And so he ran off into the forest, away from all the villagers. Now he was a monster, a mutant even, and a gingerbread man. And so it was at that moment that he decided to just isolate himself for the rest of his life, and that he would build himself a small gingerbread house out in the snowy tundra where no one could ever see him again, and so no one else would have to be turned into a cookie. But he felt lonely and lost, as he didn't want to be this mutant gingerbread man anymore. He wanted to be a villager again, one that could just bake cookies for his village. And so he decided to leave his gingerbread house, when suddenly, out of the shadows, a villager emerges, who, before the pendant could activate, dragged the gingerbread man into a lava pit.
I never believed that you were real. I always thought that you were some sort of children's legend. But once you turned my entire family into cookies, and even ate one of them, well, I knew what I had to do to you. I hope you suffer melting in that lava, just as they suffered as you boiled them into cookies, gingerbread man.
And walks away. The gingerbread man wanted to explain the situation, but once again, he couldn't, as he was melting in the lava. But as he sank deeper and deeper into that lava pit, he began to accept his fate. Maybe he did deserve this. But then, all of a sudden, the pendant starts glowing again, and attaches itself from him. But even with the pendant gone, the gingerbread man wasn't dying. And then he could feel something. It was an electrifying experience, and then he was taken to the nether. Was he going to be free now? Was he going to be able to live a life without turning those he loved into cookies now, as there were no villagers here? Well, no. Wait, was that the wither? Or was that something else? Something eviler. Something more powerful than just the wither we know. Well, to find that out, you'll need to watch this video.